Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Savana Raghunatamritam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all for this Gita course. And now we are going to start the third session in the series. And before that, let's offer our gratitude and respects to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON, and by whose mercy we are able to understand this Bhagavad Gita. So now, today's session, it is a very interesting session. The root cause analysis of why we are suffering. No, that's the primary, this one. That's the main topic, and the agenda is like this. Just before we get into the agenda, the recap of the previous sessions. So the first session, we saw that we have various different needs, and if these needs are fulfilled, so we kind of say that we are happy. And we saw that there is physical needs are there, emotional needs are there, and then we also saw that spiritual needs are there, and the spiritual needs can be completely fulfilled by studying Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is a very amazing literature on the subject matter of spirituality. And then we also saw that in the previous session, the success formula is, if you have a very good environment, which is spiritually very vibrant, and also to have Lord in our side, not just go behind the Lakshmi or the energies of Lord, just like Ravana did. He wanted Sita without Lord Ram. So we know that is not a success formula. So we need to have the Lord in our life, right? And then to have good company, that is to have well-wishers, people who are really interested in our welfare. Such people's company, we need to have. So these are all some of the aspects that we saw in the last two sessions. And now today's session is actually getting into the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we saw some of the aspects of the first chapter, and the towards the ending of the first chapter, so we could able to get the aspects of the Arjuna's various reasons for not fighting and things like that and all. So he was in dilemma, he was in so much of anxiety and things like that. So that's what the depression, he was actually getting into the mode of depression. And in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is going to give reason, Krishna is going to answer or counter answer the questions or the dilemma that Arjuna actually puts. And the first thing that happens is, Krishna is going to give the root cause analysis for the suffering. And that's what we are going to see today, right? So just before we get into, I'll just okay. So now let's and also we have the practical tip of the day. We are going to see the various causes of sufferings and then analysis of all these different causes, and we are going to come to the root cause. And as always, we have wonderful practical tips that's going to be helpful to our day-to-day lives in the practice in our day-to-day life usage, right? So let's get into the session now. So what are the different causes of suffering that we can actually think of, right? So here we are going to discuss about three things that are there. So attachment to temporary things, attitude of comparison, and then committing wrong acts. So these are the three main things that we are going to talk about. And fear of failure, actually, no, it's accompanied with the attitude of comparison, right? So these are the three main aspects that we are going to see, three main subheadings that we are going to see today in detail. And this is going to be very practical, and this is really that every one of us will be facing these things in our lives, right? So now, like somebody may say that where is suffering? Like, who's suffering? Not everyone is suffering, and things like that. So one thing we can analyze right from our birth, right from the time we get consciousness, back in the womb of our mother, when we are small, when we are so small and we are just there in the womb of the mother, the first thing after we get the consciousness that we do or that we feel is the worms in the womb of the mother is actually biting us. And the suffering starts from that point. And then when we come into this world, we are just pushed out of the womb of the mother. And we come out with so much of pain. We come out crying, right? And then there is so many different things in this world which are there, which has the potential to make us make us suffer, right? So nobody likes to go to the school. So and children are sent to the school, and then after that, we have to enter into the rat race of getting a good job or various things, and then there is maybe work pressure, then family pressure, and so many different avenues. Sometimes there is good time is there. Sometimes people feel that everything is going on okay in my life. As we studied in the previous session, that Matra Sparsastu Kaunteya Sitoshana Sukhadukkada Agama Payano Anitya Stam Titikshvasva Bharata. So Krishna says that happiness and distress both are going to be temporary in this world. Nothing is going to be permanent, and nothing is going to be it's not going to be everlasting happiness or everlasting distress. Both the things are not there. So but the suffering in this world is definitely there. And Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam, right? So he mentions in the list of knowledge, he mentions these four things to be a short miseries, that everyone has to go through, right? All of us have taken birth, as I was mentioning, that how miserably we actually are pushed out of the mother's womb, right? And then Mrityu, death, everyone has to face it, right? And then Janma, Mrityu, Jara, is old age. That also everyone has to face it, right? And then Vyadi, diseases, everyone has to face it. So these are all various things that short sufferings that are there in this world. And here we are going to see some more different aspects of the root cause of all these sufferings, right? So now let's get into one by one. The first thing, in the list is attachment, right? So the cause of suffering here is attachment. And we can understand by a very, very simple example. Imagine that you have been given maybe 1 crore of rupees in your custody by your friend, saying that he's going out somewhere, and then it's not very safe to keep that much of money in his home. So he's just handing it over to you in your custody, and then after a week, he comes back and takes it back, right? So we will not feel that much of pain, because anyway, it's just kept in my custody, and then after a week I've handed it over back to its owner, right? So but the same money, if you have won in the lottery and then after a week it has been stolen, right? So money coming in and money going out, both are the same, but then the feeling that I go through is completely different. When my friend gives me money to keep it safely and then takes it back, it's not that painful. But then when I win a lottery and then I lose it after a week, then it's very painful. So the reason behind this, I have contemplated on it. I have thought about that this is my money. When the attachment comes in, immediately there is we are signing an agreement for pain, right? So whenever there is an attachment, there is an agreement for pain, right? So now here, the exactly very same thing, that has been mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna's first argument was, how can I punish my own family members? They are my family members. I have attachment towards them. And Krishna's first instruction is what? How to deal with this attachment. So Krishna is going to tell, understanding what is temporary, acting on the platform of permanent. Now, this is what Krishna is going to start with. And that's something like we are going to elaborate with the slokas, what Krishna is telling. Now we are going to see it in more detail. Okay. So this brings us to the very interesting topic that Krishna is going to speak in second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that is the body and soul. This is the first lesson that Krishna is going to give to Arjuna, right? So now let's see. First question that may come is attachment wrong? So without attachment, we cannot do anything in this world. Without attachment, we cannot prosper in any domain. So how can I be without any attachment? That's not possible. I have to be attached to certain things of this world. So the answer is, attachment in total is not condemned. Attachment to temporary things is mentioned as the cause of suffering. Why? Because I'm going to lose it at some point in time, right? So attachment to the temporary things are considered to be the cause of suffering. And so now let's see some of the slokas from Bhagavad Gita in this regard. So Krishna, right at the outset, starts with a very wonderful sloka. This is really, really amazing sloka in the second chapter. Let's chant this sloka. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyati. He says that as the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly the soul passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So here Krishna brings in a very important distinction. He says dehi no asmin. Dehi, he puts it like the owner of the deha, dehi no asmin yata dehe. So he differentiates between the deha, the body, and the owner of the body, that is the dehi, right? So he brings in the concept of soul and the body. So what we are seeing as a person is not just the body that we are seeing in. There is a living entity inside. There is a soul within, and that's activating everything, right? So all of us know that when a person is alive, he's so lively, right? So when he dies, something goes off, and then the whole thing appears to be like completely. I don't know how many of you have experienced that, seeing a dead body, and that too, like seeing a person who was active in front of you, and then after that, like they passes away and things like that. So there is a remarkable difference over there. The whole life force is gone, and then the body is no more attractive as it was before, and it actually deteriorates over a period of time, very, very quickly. In fact, people say that it has to be cremated as quickly as possible, within a day or something like that, right? So it is so important to understand the difference between these two things, right? So the soul continuously passes. It doesn't go through any change, but the body goes through change. And the final change is called the death. Now, at the point of death, what happens? The soul gets into another body and then continues its journey. That means we never die. We, the soul, never die. Only the body goes off. Now we continue on, right? So here, this is how it is. The soul is there, and then there is deha is there. So that is divided into two parts, subtle and gross bodies. So that we will be seeing now with the help of some slokas from Bhagavad Gita. So right now, the important thing is to understand there is a dehi, the possessor of the body, that is a soul, and then the deha, that is the body, that is there, right? So it's like driver and the car, like that, the dehi and the deha. So now let's see some more granular slokas from the second chapter, or supporting this particular concept. So this is from 7th chapter, 4 and 5 slokas we are going to see. This is going to support this concept in the second chapter. So we as we are doing a thematic study, so it's going to connect all these various chapters also to support the concepts that we are presenting. Right. So let's chant the sloka. Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu kammano buddhirevacha ahankaramiti yamme binna prakritirashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So this is, Krishna is telling that there are total 8 elements. These are earth, water, fire, air, ether. So these panchabhutas, everybody knows that, So earth, water, fire, air, ether. And these Panchabhutas, like everything, all the material elements that we see in this world are made of these Panchabhutas, right? And then we have mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these are all the subtle elements, or the elements that are sukshma, or very finer elements, that cannot be perceived by our gross senses, right? So that's the this one. If you see the earth, no, it can be felt by all our senses. Earth can be seen, earth can be smelled, earth can also be tasted, earth can also be felt by touch, right? So, and earth also produces sound. If you actually strike two stones, it produces sound. So earth means it has the capacity to or entertain all our senses. More perceivable through more of our senses is the gross elements, and then perceivable by less of our senses is the subtle elements. Now water, no, there is no smell in the water. For smell, earth component is required. And in fire, there is no taste. And in air, there is no form, no. And in ether, there is no perception. No, you cannot perceive it by this one. Ether, only sound is there. So like that, it gradually from subtle to gross, it actually increases. And then we have mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are all even finer elements than ether or the space, right? So that's how these different elements are there, right? All these things, the Lord is claiming to be his external energies or material energies, right? And then the Lord is saying another energy is there. What is that? Aparyeyamitastvanyam prakritim viddhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam daryate jahat. So here the Lord is saying, besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises of living entities, all of us, the souls, right? The living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature, right? So in the material nature, we saw that two kinds of bodies that we actually told, the Dehi and the Deha. So the Deha, what comprises of Deha is these two kinds of bodies. That is gross body, which is made of the Panchabhuta, and the subtle body, which is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego, right? So these are the two kinds of bodies that are there. And what is the position of these bodies? So that we are going to see now, right? Okay, so before that, as a small, this one key, it's like the ego sometimes is so, what is that? It's actually dragging us into so many different problems. Sometimes we may have to give up this temporary thing. This whole deha is actually temporary, and catching hold on to it all the time, sometimes we may end up in trouble, right? So here this guy is carrying the heavy burden of ego, and it's going to take him down. He can take the help, but then he's caught up with his ego, right? So this is how the body is going to be. And now let's see some slokas in this regard, in the regard to the nature of the body, right? Let's chant these slokas. Antavanta ime deha nitya shoktah sharirinaha anashino aprameyasya tasmad yuddhashva bharata. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. So that means the body is temporary and the soul is indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal. The soul is permanent and the body is temporary, right? So this is sure to come to an end. And Krishna is telling, hey, you're talking about attachment to your relatives and things like that. Who are your relatives? They are eternal souls. They are not going to be dying. No, they are indestructible. Their bodies, is what is going to die. And therefore, you should not hesitate to fight. No, you should fight now. So that's Krishna is telling at this point in time. And then Krishna is telling another very interesting viewpoint about this body, right? So he's telling, Vashamshi jirnani yata vihaya navani granati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. No, he's telling that this Vashamshi jirnani, so this body is just like a cloth that I'm wearing upon. The soul is the actual person and the soul is wearing a cloth, right? So how often we change our cloth? Every day we change our cloth, right? So in the same way, the soul also changes. Every day it's cloths, or every lifetime it's bodies. It keeps changing, right? So in that way, like the body is temporary. The Krishna is actually bringing in the point that this body is temporary, right? So then, no, Krishna is telling another interesting thing. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridadesharjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutanam yantra rudani mayaya. So here he says, this body is like a yantra rudani mayaya. So this body is nothing but like a machine, in which we are situated, and the Supreme Lord is situated in this machine, and he directs the wanderings of this machine, right? So this is what Krishna is actually mentioning, that this body is just like a machine, that is made of the material energy, right? So with this, we can get a picture of this body. What is this body? This body is destructible and changed, just like we change our clothes, and then it's just like a vehicle, right? So it is not, we are the spirit souls, we are the soul Atma, and this body is different from us, and this is temporary. It's not going to be there with us forever, right? So that's the nature of the body. And now let's study about the soul. What's the nature of the soul? What's the nature of us, the soul? So there is nice set of another slokas are there, which is, this hearing and chanting of this Gita slokas is so purifying and so auspicious, right? So it could, even if we don't understand the meaning of it, it's still very auspicious. And now here, there, trying to understand the meaning of these slokas and trying to get some relevance into our life, it's really very wonderful, right? So let's try to chant this sloka. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakah, na chainam kledayantyapo, na soshati marutah. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind, right? The soul is so indestructible. Nothing can be done to the soul. No, it's always existent. No, you cannot mute a soul. No, that's not possible. The soul is ever existent. No, it is sanatana, right? And then, okay, so now, achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo shosha evacha nitya sarvagatasthānur achaloyam sanatanaha. The individual soul is unbreakable and insolvable and can neither be burnt or nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Right. So this is the this one about the soul. It is completely indestructible, right? So it is not at all destructible. So that's the nature of the soul. So now we saw the aspect of the attachment to the temporary things causes suffering, and we can very clearly see this body is temporary and the soul is permanent, and the soul is going to change bodies as we change the clothes, right? So somebody may say, okay, this looks like the concept of reincarnation. And is the concept of reincarnation just a religious sentiment? And does this has any scientific or some common sense and things like that into this whole thing, right? So let's see, let's see some common sense and logical understanding on this particular point. So how do we communicate a person if he's dead, right? So we tell that the person he's passed away, right? So we are seeing the body is there, but still we say the person has passed away, right? So somebody was here and he passed away, right? So then and then in different languages also we can see that in Hindi, chale gaye. So in probably in various different languages, you can say that he has gone, right? So that's the common sense, this one that we can actually get in. And then we see that we actually we have that intuitive understanding that somebody was there and then somebody has left this place, right? So that understanding is very much there in our system, in our very languages. And then we also can see some real life examples. And here we are going to see a case of a person by name Deep Kapadia. So he was working as a security in Udaipur Fort, in his previous life. And then after his death, he was born again in Mumbai, right? And then he started speaking in Marwadi language suddenly, and then he was telling that I have to go to Udaipur and things like that. and the parents and all the relatives, they became very astonished. How is this boy talking about some faraway place, and then he has not got any experience of anything in this world, and suddenly he's speaking a different language, and he has never learned that language in his life. And then he's telling that he has to go to some place, and there his family is there, and all the other things and all. So they were also curious. They actually took this boy, and then they went there. And in fact, like, the parents thought that he has gone mad. They tried various medicines and different treatments and things like that. Finally, they went to a group of doctors, headed by Ian Stevenson, who actually does this experiments on the past life memories and experiences and things like that. And then he was on the advice of the doctor. So the small boy was taken to Udaipur, and then he gave exact directions to the house which he claimed to be his house. And then he saw a 33-year-old man there, and he told that, no, this is my son, this was my son. And then he embraced him. And then he went to the Udaipur, this fort. And in the fort, he was a security in the fort. And then he found, he actually took out a rifle, which was there, kept inside, kind of a safe in the second floor of the fort. And then also he operated a kerosene operated machine, means fan over there, which is, nobody knows like how to operate that. It is a old generation fan. And in this way, it was quite sure that the soul passes from one body to another, and then it takes on different bodies, right? So this is something like which we can see from these practical examples, and from the aspects of the scientific verification and the real life examples of this world. And this is the doctors, who actually who heads the group of doctors, who does reincarnation studies and things like that. He has done more than 3,000 cases, experiments, and then he's a psychiatrist in University of Virginia. And he passed away in 2007, but then he did so many cases of reincarnation testing, right? So in this way, we can see that the subject matter which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita is not some random subject, right? So it is practically verifiable. It is truth, right? So, and then we also have people going through near-death experiences, right? So here is one patient, who was under severe anesthesia, and practically he's called clinically dead, because there is no consciousness over there, because he's completely under severe anesthesia. And after the operation is finished, and he actually tells that, I went to the roof of this hospital, and then there was the roof was quite dirty, and then there was a pair of Nike shoes there, and then there was a dirty water tank and stuff like that, and there was an oak tree in the front of the hospital. Actually, this patient was taken into the hospital when he was completely he didn't have any consciousness. And then the operation was done, and after the operation he's telling all these things, right? So this person had an out of body experience. When he was operated, he actually, the soul could actually go about in different places in the hospital, and then actually came back. So this is a this one by the Michael Sabam, this cardiologist. He gives this scenario. He gives this case. This also proves that the deha and the dehi is different. The dehi, or the soul, can have an experience outside the body as well, right? So in the same way, we have many near-death experiences, like out-of-body experiences and things like that. So which shows that the soul is different, and then the soul is permanent, and it continues to exist even when the body ceases to exist, right? So we can understand that the soul is, it can exist beyond the body. So the body is temporary, and we, the soul, are permanent. And then attachment to the temporary causes suffering, right? So this is the first thing that we were seeing. The first cause of suffering in this world is attachment to the temporary things. Now, knowing that this body is temporary, we should actually focus on the soul permanent, the permanent aspect, that is a soul. And that's where the spirituality comes into the place. The soul is spirit and the body is matter. And no, anything that is to do with the body is called materialism, and anything that is to do with the soul is called spiritualism. So spiritualism or spiritual life is a very, very important thing to lead a very happy life, right? So attachment to the temporary things, causes suffering. And the second cause of suffering is the attitude of comparison. This is something that, inevitably, many of us have to again and again face in our own lives, right? So this attitude of comparison, just to understand, we'll see a very interesting, a small story, wherein a person, he was a worshipper of Mother Kali, and he worshipped Mother Kali, and then he was praying that whatever I wish, I should get it. No, whatever I wish, I should get it. And then no, Mother Kali told, okay, fine, so you may get it, but then there is a condition. No, what is the condition? That whatever you will get, no, your neighbor will get double of it, right? So then, but then this person was in so much joy hearing that, okay, you will get it. No, he didn't hear the next portion of the blessings. So he went back home joyfully, and then he desired that he should have a two-story building. That was his dream, to have a two-story building. And then, like, he came out, and then he came out, and he was he wanted to boast it amongst his neighbors. But then he came and saw that his friend is having four-story building. All his happiness gone for a toss. And then he desired, I want to have a car. And then he went out to boast himself, but then his friend had, or his neighbor had, two cars. And in this way it kept on going, and he was not at all getting happiness. He was getting all that what he wanted, but then his neighbor is getting double of it. So he was actually getting into so much of distress because of that, right? So this shows that what we want, even if we achieve that, still we may not be happy, still we may not be satisfied and peaceful. So what actually makes us happy, in this world, or in this material scenario, is that the difference between the other person and me. If I am better than other person a little bit more, okay, then I feel happy. Yeah, I'm something great, I'm something better, right? So, but then if I have a difference from the other person, in a negative side, so then I see, oh, like, all happiness goes for a toss. So the happiness, people are not becoming happy just by what they have. People are comparing themselves with the other persons, and that's what makes them happy or distress. So regarding this, there is a very, very wonderful sloka, and this sloka is going to give a lot of insight into our practical life. It's really, really very important sloka. Now let's focus on this sloka now. So it says, Swadharmacharanam shaktya vidharmacha nivartanam daival labdena santosha atmavid charanarsanam, right? So this is very, very important. Swadharmacharanam shaktya. How should we actually work? We should work, like whatever swadharma, whatever nature we have possessed, we have got, we should work according to the nature. And how much to work? It's shaktya. How much energy I've got, how much of strength I've got, I should work to the maximum capacity, right? And vidharmacha nivartanam. So I should not aspire to do somebody else's work, right? Vidharma is like paradharma or vidharma, like somebody else's work. No, I should not aspire to do somebody else's work. And then this point is really very important. The point of happiness, right? What is that point of happiness? Daival labdena santosha. That means to be happy with whatever we get by the grace of the Lord, right? So the results is in the hands of the Lord, and whatever we get by the grace of the Lord should be our source of happiness, right? So if we think that the other person has got something better and I don't have it, so then it's a source of distress, right? So daival labdena santosha, it's the amazing formula of happiness. And then atma with charanarsanam. So we should take the association of people like who are spiritually very elevated, and who are spiritually very high in their consciousness. So now let's break down this thing and get into a little bit more deeper into the sloka, right? So performing one's duty, working according to one's nature. It's very important to understand what kind of a person I am, what kind of works that I'm suitable for, right? So the scriptures talk about, there are 4 different classes of people: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Again, here we are not talking about the caste system which has been propagated in the modern world. Now we are going to talk about some scientific system which Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, right? So he says, Chaturvarna Maya Shishtam, Gunakarma Vibhagasha. So Swadharma is depending on our nature. No, if a person is a Brahmana, how we know a person is a Brahmana? He can control his senses well. He's calm, composed. He's a visionary. No, he can actually think in long term. No, he's not going to settle for something in short term benefits and things like that. He's going to work for a long time. No, he's going to work for those things which are going to give a long time benefit, right? So in that way, he's going to work. And then the Kshatriya as a person, he has also got control of senses, but then he has got Ishwara Bhav. He has the attitude of controlling tendency, and then the Kshatriya can face any problem that comes. No, he will not shy away from problem. Rather, when problems are there, he will be very enthused, right? So we see that in the battle of Kurukshetra, so many people were assembled, and is it not that they don't know that warriors like Bhishma, Drona, and in the Karna, and then this side, Bhima and Arjuna and all these great warriors were there. They will, all the small kings and small time warriors, they will just be crushed in the battle. But then, they're not worried about their life over there. They, for them, it is like a great happiness. I am going to get into the war where such great emperors are there, such great powerful warriors are there. Even if I am crushed in this war, that's not a problem. The Kshatriyas means they get some kind of a different happiness, not to face a problem, face a challenge, right? So such people are called Kshatriyas, right? So such people, they have their own set of tasks to do. No, we cannot, like everyone cannot do that kind of tasks. And then Vaishyas, their mind naturally works on economic development and things like that. Such kind of people are called Vaishyas. And then Shudras are people who cannot control their senses, right? So who cannot control their senses, and it is not a caste system by birth. Krishna says very, very clearly, it's not that just because if I'm born of a son of a Brahmana, I can just be a Brahmana. If somebody is born of a Shudra, he has to be a Shudra all his life. It's not like that. The Krishna says that Chaturvarna Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. The Vibhaga or the division is made based on Guna and Karma. He never told Janma. Krishna never tells Janma. It is not by birth. These castes are not based on birth. Just like, if anybody is applying for a job, the interview is taken based on his qualities. Nobody is going to ask, like, are you coming from, who's your parents and things like that and all, right? So it's primarily based on your qualification. In the same way, this 4 different varna and ashrama is made basically based on one's guna and karma, one's qualities and activities, right? So that's what actually defines. So one should know one's duty, based on his nature, and then he should work according to the nature, right? So if for example, if a Vaishya, who's good in economic development, he's seeing a Kshatriya, oh, he's so brave, I'm not so brave. When there is a problem, I cannot face the problem in the way like he's facing and things like that. So probably that is not what we are meant for. We are meant for something else. We are meant for doing some other thing. Why we should force fit everyone into everything else, right? So it is not the job of, we don't need to think and compare in this way. We have to analyze what we are meant to do and what is the qualities that I have got, what is the strengths that I have got, and I should just simply work on those strengths and I'll be successful in my life in my own right. Right? So that is a very important thing. We have got an acquired nature, and based on this nature, we should act. And the action is going to be for the satisfaction of mind and not to prove anything to this world or not to show that I'm better than all these guys and things like that. That's not what the work is meant for, right? And then, work to our capacity. This is also a very important thing. So if I work less than my capacity, Shakti or this aspect, if I work less than my capacity, so then I'll become lazy. And if I try to work more than my capacity, then I'll become crazy actually. No, we should not be lazy or crazy. No, we should be balanced. No, this is one thing that the yoga concept of yoga actually teaching us, that we have to be balanced. We should know our nature, we should know our capacity, and we should work to the maximum of our capacity. Anything less or more is not going to be helpful for us, right? So that's the in this one. And then we see that various people have this different complexities and things like that. So people have inferiority complex. Oh, I cannot do, and I know I'm not successful, and depression and lack of confidence and things like that. So it's basically because of comparison. No, they're just comparing themselves with somebody else who's able to do something much better than them. And why should we even have to compare in that way, right? So we should not. That kind of comparison is not a healthy comparison, right? And then superiority complex, this is another side of depression, I would say, like pride and lack of trust in the friends, and then overconfidence and things like that. So this is another form of depression. People are suffering from, but people think that, oh, it's something very nice, right? So that is also a problem, right? So superiority complex is also a problem which arises from the comparison. And this superiority complex, when it is flipped, it will become depression, right? So the superiority complex or the pride, when it is flipped, it becomes depression. And the flip doesn't take much time, for many people. So if they are superior and they are enjoying the position of being superior and having a lot of pride in that, so the moment another person comes into the scene who's better than this person, oh, this person is shattered, finished. He'll get into depression, right? So that's what is very important. We cannot remain idle. We cannot remain lazy. We cannot remain crazy. We have to be balanced. That's what the scriptures teach us. We have to be balanced, and we should not have unhealthy comparisons, right? So many times I see, the children are forced, like in many of my experiences, like, I see that the people are forced that you should do it. Why? Because like everyone else is doing it. You should do it. And probably he's meant for doing something else. Why such a force needs to be applied, right? So this is the problem of the attitude of comparison, and huge problems are happening in the society because of this reason, right? So that is why we should not aspire for another's duty. I want to do a profession which is popular. Why? Because everyone is doing. I'm just comparing myself with the other persons in the this one, and I want the higher position which I'm not capable of, right? So this is also a very important thing, that sometimes in the job and in the organizations, we generally have this management principle that people want to go up and up and up above till the time they become completely ineffective for that particular role, right? So that's how people become inefficient very soon, and then they are thrown out from the system. So we should know our capacity, and we should know like what best I can actually go to, and then we should actually be there in the balance. So the scriptures, as we are going through the Bhagavad Gita in the future sessions, we will also be studying about this particular aspect of the natures, how to identify our natures in more in detail in one of the in the later sessions. And it's very, very scientific. We as a machine, the body as a machine, is so complex in its working. And the scriptures, Lord being the manufacturer of this body, he gives a clear definition or user manual of this body in the scriptures. And if we can just study this and then apply according to this particular principle, or live according to this principle, we can actually be happy, right? So it is not a very foreign thing, right? So it is something. Bhagavad Gita is something very, very. It's about ourselves. It's about our own particular existence and self, right? So that's what is that we are studying here, right? So. And then we need to actually have the trust on people, like we should basically trust on. We should not force people to become something, or we should not force ourselves also to become something. We should have a balanced approach in this particular direction, and then we should be satisfied with whatever results that is coming by the grace of the Lord. So I always used to tell the Vedic system and the modern system. The Vedic system gave a lot of emphasis on the duty. This is my duty. What is the result of it? Oh, I never mind what is the result. So this is my duty to be done. I will have to do it. And in the modern system is what? The more focus and emphasis is on the result. What will I get out of it? Why should I do this? Right? So that's the primary thing. That's the in Kali Yuga, the focus is given a lot on the result, and it's quite frustrating. The experience is quite frustrating. And in the Vedic times, the focus is given a lot on the duty. I am a son of a father. I must do the duty, towards my father. I'm an employee. I must do my duty, in that particular this one. If I'm a student, I must just simply study, very nicely. So in this way, by focusing on the duty and taking the focus out of the result, I will get better results. And it is proven. It is 100% proven. And anybody who focuses on the duty takes their sight out of the result. Forget about the result. I just want to do this task to my best of the capacity. Then where will the results go? The results have to come, right? So there is no possibility that we will get any bad result. And even if I get a bad result, by somebody's mistake or somebody's miscalculation, still I'm satisfied because my focus was on duty and I've did my part the best, right? So in that way, I'll become very, very satisfied and very, that's the best way to do anything. So that's why in the Vedic system, people were quite satisfied and happy in their entire life. And in the modern day, we are producing society as a whole. I'm saying we are producing a lot of depression cases. Why? Because we are not teaching our generations, our people, the basic essence of our scriptures. Our scriptures actually gives emphasis on duty, not on the result, right? So this is something that that we all have to think and ponder about, right? So when we put on the duty, put emphasis on the duty, there is no comparison. This is my duty. I'll just do it, to the best of my capacity and to the best, I will execute it. When I put emphasis on the result, oh, he is getting that result, I'm getting this result, I should get that result. Oh, it's so much of comparison and so much of pain over there, right? So that's not something to be done. And here we see that, a summary of what we have discussed. We should perform our duty and work to the maximum capacity, and don't aspire for another's duty. Be satisfied with whatever results are coming. And the duty is meant for our satisfaction of the mind or acquired nature. We have a particular kind of a nature, and we can just satisfy the nature by appropriate duty. And it is not to prove anything to anyone, right? So that's something that we have to understand. And if we can do this, it is so liberating. It's so amazing, this experience is. We will all find it really very interesting, right? So here in this picture, we see Lord Ram is actually giving attention to the squirrel, and like Hanuman on an equal platform. Squirrel was doing his best, to his best of his capacity, and Hanuman also was doing service to the best of his capacity, right? And in the eyes of Lord, it is not the quantum of work that you do, it is the quality of work that you do matters a lot, right? So that's what we have to focus on. And we have seen time and again people succeeding immensely just by focusing on their duty. That's really a very powerful thing, right? So we should try to see that we get onto this platform of focusing on our duty more than the results, right? Now we get into the third cause of suffering. The first cause of suffering is the attachment to the temporary things, and the primary temporary thing that we saw is the body, that we possess, which we have to leave at certain point in time. So that's the first cause of suffering. And second cause of suffering that we saw is the attitude of comparison, wherein we should be satisfied with our duty and our whatever that I can do best according to my nature, and not get into the attitude of comparison, right? So that's the attitude of comparison is a source of big pain and misery in the world, right? And then the third cause of suffering is doing wrong, doing wrong actions, right? So this is something, again, it's nicely mentioned in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So here we see how does this wrong actions come into picture. So we're going to see some root cause analysis onto this particular aspect. So these two slokas we are going to discuss now is again really very powerful and wonderful slokas. Now let's chant these slokas. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pachayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate While contemplating on the object of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. Right. So this is equation. No, that's given. So contemplating on the objects of the senses, what happens? We develop attachment to it, and once we develop attachment, it's like you can just imagine like you're just passing by on the street, and then nice. No, imagine you like the gulab jamuns very much, and there is in a shop there is wonderful gulab jamuns where are made and kept in the shop, and then the moment till now you don't have the idea of having it, but then the moment you see that there is some kind of a contemplation has started, right? So I just contemplate upon what if I have one, right? So then slowly the attachment comes, and then attachment about that particular idea, and then lust means desire or enjoy, trying to enjoy something is called lust, right? So when the lust comes in, the next thing that comes in is the lust. The attachment develops into lust. And when it is not fulfilled, right? So then I get angry, right? So this is the sequence that Krishna is mentioning in Bhagavad Gita, and it has something more to it. So let's continue this particular sloka. Krodad bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhramshat buddhi nasho, buddhi nashat pranashyati. So from anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When the memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool, right? So this is a very interesting kind of equation. So till anger we saw in the previous equation, and this sloka, it talks about from anger comes the bewilderment of memory. When we are angry, we cannot properly think. We cannot properly act and think. In a conscious way. Our intelligence is taken off, right? So intelligence is lost, and then he is ready to do anything. This is all social crimes, suicides, and rapes, and all these things come in. So, for example, like the rapes, time and again we keep seeing so many different cases coming in. But then, is it not the people don't know that they are going to get a severe punishment? And every time it happens, people go on dharna, people go on so much of, they make a huge hue and cry of it. And then what is their petition? We should still more intensify the punishments. We should still more intensify the charges upon these people who does this crime. So, but then they know very little that when they do these things, already they have contemplated upon, they have developed attachment, they have gone into the phase of lust and anger and bewilderment, and intelligence is lost. The equation is traversed sufficiently long, and it is quite difficult to reverse at that point in time. Even if you tell him that, no, you are going to be punished because of this act, but then his intelligence is lost. Already he has gone so mad about doing that particular activity. Why? Because contemplation, right? So much of social media, so much of films, so much of in every media, the women is portrayed in a very, very bad way, right? And then the people see those things, and they get affected by that, and they develop attachment. They see in the dreams the scantily dressed women and things like that, and then at certain point in time they lose their composure, and they actually get into this kind of wrong acts, right? So nobody is talking about this. Nobody is talking about these kind of obscene things that are there in the media and things like that. Let all these things be there, but people should not commit any wrong acts, or even women dressing very badly and getting onto the streets and things like that. So that's also very it's not a very good thing. So in this way, like we see that contemplation, everything starts on the contemplation and it ends on committing something wrong. And the moment I commit something wrong, the punishment is awaiting. It's immediately awaiting. That's why it is very important. The spiritual values and spiritual consciousness, it talks about sense control. Why sense control is so important? If we want to really enjoy, then we have to control our senses. It's not that I just unleash my senses, let the senses go on, go like a cow and graze anything and everything which is there in this world. So that's not the perfect formula. That's not the right formula to do, right? So the right formula is to control the senses and to have things properly. We all know, especially in terms of eating, if we have a controlled eating, balanced diet and things like that, our health is quite good. But then if I overeat and if I do any of the senses, if it is overdone, no, it is definitely, it's going to result in problem, and definitely it's going to result in some kind of a crisis, right? So that's the third cause of suffering, that is committing the wrong acts. No, that is the third cause of suffering, right? So let's see another interesting sloka in this connection. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavyatah stantir ashantasya kutasukam. One who is not connected with the Supreme, can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace, right? So this is very, very important. If I don't know the root of my existence, that's what is mentioned in the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, it's very difficult to attain peace, and without peace there is no happiness also, right? There is another nice sloka. Neha Bikramana Shosti Pratyavayo na Vidyate Swalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. In this process of spiritual endeavor, right? In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear, right? So this is the this is the promise that Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita, that by practicing the spiritual life according to Bhagavad Gita, even if I don't finish this practice completely, still, even if a little bit of practice that is done, it can actually save me from greatest problem, greatest struggles, and greatest fear and things like that. So in that way, we saw the various aspects of the cause of suffering. And then if we see the root cause of all these things is attachment to the temporary things, and that is especially the body, right? So if I'm attached to this body, then I'm comparing this body with another body, and then I'm like getting by the dictation of the senses, and then getting on to doing something wrong and things like that. So this attachment to this temporary body is always a cause of suffering, is always a cause of suffering. That's the thing that we can actually see from this whole session, right? So now let's get into the practical tip of the day, and then we will have a little bit of mantra meditation, and then have a question and answers, right? So the practical tip of the day, the subject that we spent the most of the time in today's session, that's going to be the practical tip of the day. And that's this. How should I work? We should perform our duty. We should perform our own duty, not somebody else's duty, according to my nature, right? And we should work to the maximum of our capacity, and we should not aspire to do somebody else's duty. And we should be satisfied with whatever results that is achieved, and whatever results come by the grace of the Lord. And then duty is meant for the satisfaction of our mind, and not to prove anything, and for this to this world. It is primarily meant for our engagement according to the nature, right? So that's the primary need of this particular duty that we need to do, right? So if we do in this way, so we can actually avoid the sufferings of this world, and we can actually live in much more satisfied and peaceful way, right? And then these all practical tips, sometimes people ask me that whatever you say is so wonderful, so nice, but then how to put this into life? Every time I try to put this into my life, for 1 or 2 days I'm able to do, and after that I'm not able to do. It's because we need to have a solid spiritual practice, a solid spiritual sadhana in our day-to-day life. That is when we will get the inner strength, inner spiritual strength to do all these things. Now all these practical tips will work only if we have the this particular sadhana that we are doing, that is chanting of this mantra meditation, is really very important. That gives us the inner strength to follow these good tips that are coming out from Bhagavad Gita. So if we don't have the inner strength, it's very difficult. It's not possible for us to do these things. Probably we will be able to do 1 or 2 days, and after that we will not be able to do, right? So let's chant the sloka. Kritayadhyayato Vishnum Kretayam Yajato Makaihi Dvapare Paricharyayam Kalautad Harikirtanad. So in different ages, there were different methods of worship was there. In Krita Yuga or Satya Yuga, the method of worship that was there is Dhyayato Vishnum, to meditate on Vishnu. And Tretayam, Yajatomakai. In Treta Yuga, elaborate fire sacrifice were there. And Dvapare Paricharyayam, in Dvapara Yuga, no elaborate temple worship was there. And Kalautad Harikirtanat. In Kali Yuga, the best form of worship is the chanting the names of the Lord, right? So this is the best form of worship that is there in the Kali Yuga. And we are so fortunate. We are able to chant this mantras, and we are able to do this mantra meditation. And this is really very powerful. And this sloka in the Kali Santarna Upanishad, it mentions that Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, iti shodashakam nam nam, Kali Kalmasha Nashanam, Natahat Paratropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. So this 16 names composed of 32 syllables are the only means to counteract the ill effects of Kali Yuga. And all the Vedas, it is in all the Vedas, it is seen that that to cross the ocean of Nishans, there is no alternative than to chanting these names. So this is the version of Lord Brahma in Kali Santarna Upanishad. It's really very powerful sloka, right? It's a very powerful mantra. So now let's chant this mantra 16 times. Now first let us chant this, before we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, we have to chant this mantra once, and then we will chant 16 times. And I would request all of you to go back and chant 108 times. That's considered to be one mala. That will be very auspicious for you, right? So now let's chant 16 times and then get on to the question and answers, right? So now let's close our eyes and be focused, and we'll chant this, the Panchatattva mantra once, and then the Hare Krishna mantra 16 times. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so now let's start the question and answers. So I hope you have put some questions on the this chat box, and we'll start from here. So how can I feel the soul in human body? There is breath, but how can I find the soul? The consciousness that you are able to be conscious, that itself is the proof of the soul, right? So if the soul is not there, this consciousness, the activity, the thought process, nothing will be there, right? So that's the proof of the soul. And Krishna belongs to which category? I didn't understand. You can basically, kind of elaborate this question. Krishna is God. Krishna is if you want any more better clarification, you can rephrase your question. So if caste system never existed, then why was Ekalavya denied to be taken the student of Drona? Because he was trying to force himself. He was what is that? No, when his quality can be seen. No, after Drona actually rejects him, no, he actually keeps a murti of the Drona, and then he tries to imagine that he is his spiritual master, and then no, he claims that Drona is a spiritual master and things like that and all. So Dronacharya was not very pleased with this. So proper etiquette would be that if spiritual master is not willing to accept, so then he should try to please him in different ways, and then try to win his favor in that way, right? So if the spiritual master is saying like, no, I don't want to, if the guru is saying that, no, I don't want to teach you, so then he's taking a shortcut way, no, and then overseeding the spiritual master. So then that is not a very good this one. So there we can see the Ekalavya's position. A Brahmana would not do this, or a higher class person who has a better control of senses would never do that thing, right? So in that way, like there is much more dimension to the Ekalavya story that is there, right? So then Ekalavya showed his smartness at the time of taking admission in Guru Drona's school. He killed a dog to impress Guru Dronacharya, not because of caste system. And he didn't want to serve dharma. Okay, so that's one answer. That's a nice thing. And how can we know what we are meant to do? So this, you can wait for a session. Who's pulling our strings? That's going to talk. We are going to talk about 3 modes of nature, and these different kinds of the natures that are there. It's combination of these 3 modes, that is goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattva guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. And when we understand these gunas, and when we understand what proportion of these gunas are there in our system, so then we can actually identify what kind of a person we are, and we can actually work based on that, right? So this profiling, this is one of the interesting things which I found in Bhagavad Gita, where we can actually understand what kind of a profile, what kind of a person I am, and actually I can work based on that profiling, right? So that's something very like you can or you can also go to the 3 modes of nature chapter in Bhagavad Gita, and you can explore a little bit. You'll get an idea, and when the session comes, you'll find it more relevant at the time. So please share some knowledge about meditation, how to do it, and how much time a day. So the meditation, we are trying to do this mantra meditation. The best or the right way to do this meditation is, we are going to utter the names. Now we are going to utter this Hare Krishna mantra, and we are just going to listen to it, right? So nothing should come on the way. Nothing else should go in the system. And I'm just going to, this is called the mantra meditation. So mantra means like, if I have a dirt in my shirt, I can actually wash it with some detergent. And if I have some dirt in my body, I can use some soap, or I can take a bath. But then if there is dirt in the mind, I cannot just take it out. So many times we have seen that if there is any problem in the mind, if mind is affected by something, it just keeps going on and on and on. It's so difficult to take it out. Sometimes we end up having sleepless nights, thinking, pondering over certain problem, and we want to get out of it, but then it's not going off. So that's where manastrayate iti mantra, the definition of mantra is manastrayate iti mantra. That which can deliver the mind, that which can actually purify the mind, is called mantra. And the mantra meditation is done in this way. We should chant as much as we can hear, and not too loud, not too slow, not too soft. It's like as much as I can hear, that soft or that loud we have to chant. And then we should better, if we can close our eyes, and if we can just be there in an environment where there is not much of disturbance. And the best time to do the meditation is early morning, Brahma Muhurta time. And if you are not able to do, then any other part of the day you can do. So sit down in a place, and then just focus on the sound vibration, and you will see it's so amazing. The sound just enters into the system, and it can actually just, it can give you some really amazing kind of an experience, in this particular this one. This is the way we should do. And as of now, you can actually try to do somewhere around 1 mala, 108 times. And if you like, you can chant a little more, 2 malas or 3 malas and things like that. So best is like 15 minutes to half an hour is a best deal as of now. It can be a good thing to start off, right? And then please put the link of the record in the group today because okay, so Ganesh Puja a little busy to concentrate on class. That's good. Like we will post this on the YouTube and share the link with you all, right? And Ekalavya was killed by Lord Krishna because of wrong deed. Okay, that's okay. So then, as you talked about focus, please also tell us the basics of focus. How can someone focus on something in which the person is not interested? For example, job, studies, and or at any work that requires focus and dedication for the day-to-day life. See, focus comes when there is distraction is less. If I have a lot of distractions, then the focus is not there. And I cannot stop this world from creating the distractions. This world is going to be as it is. The environment is going to be as it is. If I can reduce the distractions, and if I can just understand this is my duty that is there, and I must perform it, right? So if I think that, okay, how can I just get this job done and just get away, then I'll never get focus on it. We should think that this is my duty and I have to do it. If it is really your duty, like job, studies, and things like that. So if it is a duty that needs to be done, that needs to be done. So let me just focus on that, right? So for that, we have to vacate other things from the mind, one thing at a time. That's a very important thing. So the yoga or the mind control and things like that, it talks about one thing at a time, right? So it's even in the processors and in the scientific world, we talk about multiprocessing and things like that. But then if you go to the level of the processor, it can just execute one instruction at one time cycle, right? So that's the way everything is designed. And we are also designed like that, right? So human beings are not meant for crunching a huge amount of tasks at one point in time. If we can just put focus on one thing and vacate on all other things, that's where the main aspect of focus comes. And this practice, we can start by practicing the mantra meditation. When we are chanting the mantra, so many other things will come. We have to just say like, no, this time I'm just going to listen this mantra. That's it, right? So more we perfect this practice, more we are going to be immune from the disturbances that are coming from this world. This world will keep on going. There is going to be so much of distractions in this world. The world will never stop. But we should start being not disturbed by the distractions that is coming from outside. And that's there in our capacity, right? So we have to practice that by the way of mantra meditation. And once we master the practice of mantra meditation, so then one thing at a time. Whatever I take, that's it. That's the only one thing that I will be focusing on. So that's something that we have to do to get the focus, right? So how to control the senses? The senses, again, if you see, why the point of controlling the senses come? Because the eyes like to look on something very nice. So, and people have marketed it very nicely. So the YouTube is there and so many different social media is there and everything, all these things, what it is doing, it is just simply doing that. It's just simply showing us various different things that you keep seeing like that, right? So now I have to take a call that's saying that, no, I'm not just going to feed my eyes as and when it is asking for something. I'm just not going to simply go by what my eyes want to see. I have a control. I need to put a hard stop for this, right? So this also, the inner strength, this requires a lot of inner strength. Our inner strength is weak, then whatever the senses decide, that is what will happen. If our inner strength is strong, so then I can say the senses, I can say the eyes, enough is enough. No, you have seen sufficient. Now you have to move on. The next thing is important. So this is called sense control, and that's possible by inner strength, right? So we can define the sense control in different ways, but then how we will be able to achieve this one pointed focus, the mantra meditation, is really, really very powerful system to actually get that inner strength, get that aspect of focus. I'm just going to do this and nothing else and things like that. So these all things, that's why we have to take this mantra meditation very, very seriously. and that's going to give a lot of results, a lot of wonderful results, right? Okay. If the caste system is not there, then why Parashuram cursed Karna? So because no, Karna told that no, he is he's not truthful to him. Like he was forcing himself to be a some other varna, and then like I think if I remember right, if once the what is it? Some kind of a bee which bites him and things like that and all. So no, he could able to tolerate. So Parashuram could able to understand that he belongs to a different varna, but then he was no, he was telling something else. So that's the cause of his anger. That came in. So these things in the Vedic system, the result is not that much important. The words that we give, the deeds that we do, and the qualities that we actually showcase, that's very, very important. That's given a lot of importance, right? So in that way, like there it was a discrepancy. I'm not able to remember the exact details of that. So something of that sort was there. I can get the details. If you message me privately, then I can check out the details in the story, and then I can tell that. How to develop detachment with your own body when we are suffering from some disease, right? So right now, the body and ourselves, it's like a smudged entity. No, it's completely smudged. It's very difficult to get the detachment out of this body, right? So if I have a disease in the body, if I have fever and things like that, I will definitely get affected by that. But then, the spiritual practice, that is where the spiritual practices come into picture. Now, where I master the spiritual practices, then what happens is the scriptures talk about different levels of consciousness. So first level of consciousness is called Annamaya Kosha. Annamaya Kosha means, so for a child, if you see, whatever you give 500 rupee note, you give a toy, you give anything, the first thing the child will do is put it into its mouth. No, it knows that everything that exists in this world is just a food particle, and I can just put it into my mouth. That's Annamaya Kosha, right? So, being in very, very low level of consciousness. And then next level is Annamaya, then Pranamaya, then Manomaya, then Vijnanamaya, and things like that. So different levels of consciousness is there. And in different levels of consciousness, different things means a lot for us, right? So at the Pranamaya, like safeguarding one's life, security and things like that, matters a lot. And then like at the Manomaya, there is different achievements and different mental satisfactions matters a lot. And then Vijnanamaya, there is in Vijnanamaya is what the body and soul, like we can be completely detached from the body, right? So anything happens to the body, tata bye bye. Like I'm not at all affected by it, right? So that's something we can get in the level of Vijnanamaya, and we are going to have the chanting process is going to take us even beyond this level. It's going to take us to the level of Vijnanamaya and then Anandamaya. That's the highest stage of spiritual realization, and this chanting process and the mantra meditation can take us to that level, right? So immediately, as of now, if you're already there, so it's not just one day's job, right? It requires a constant practice to do that. And how is Krishna described in Samaveda? I don't know much about Samaveda. I've studied Bhagavad Gita and I can cite from Bhagavad Gita. It is said that we need to do 16 mala of Mahamantra. How can we do that? I am able to do 1 or 2. How to reach 16? So all of us do 16. Most of the people here. Immediately it may not be possible. So if I can focus on the mantra, and if I can actually gain some kind of taste in it, if I can actually feel the taste of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and this mantra meditation, then I can gradually increase, right? So if somebody is eating a sweet, I don't need to convince him saying that, I think you should take one more. So he will automatically say, no, I want one more, right? So that's that's the secret. So if we can actually focus on the mantra meditation, the meditation is not about the quantity. We can come to the bigger quantity immediately, But then the meditation is not about the quantity. The quality of the meditation is very important. If I focus on the quality now, automatically the quantity will increase. No, it's going to increase automatically, right? So we just have to meditate and focus and hear the sound vibration. And just by doing this simple process, we will feel so nice about the whole process. We would like to increase the whole thing, right? So it's not, we don't need to forcibly increase, in that way. And then I know what is good for me to become a better person, but I lack the self-discipline to perform the daily tasks in context of spirituality. And is my only suffering. Please help me how to overcome. Yeah, so we have to the inner strength that I was talking about, the lack of regularity. So one very important thing about the yoga principle is that same thing, same time, every day, right? So that's a very important principle. It may be very, very simple. One mala of chanting Hare Krishna mantra, same thing, same time, every single day. Just practice this thing. If you just do one thing and every single day, same time, you're going to do that, it's going to become really very powerful process, right? So I don't know, like how many of you have gone to trekking and gone to places where the falls and waterfalls and all these things are there. So if you see there, somewhere in some places, the water may be slightly dripping, sideways waters, slightly dripping, and it is dripping on a particular point. And water dripping, if a water drop falls on our hand, we will not feel any pain. That's not at all an impact, right? But that much of impact over a period of years, it makes a cavity in a hard rock, right? So that's the power of doing same thing, same time, every single day. That makes so much of difference in our life. It can actually carve out a personality, into our system, right? So that's how powerful is the thing. So if we can just do, rather than doing something really great, rather than trying to do something really big, we should just try to do something very small and same thing, same time every day, and in smaller doses. And that's going to give you a really, really very amazing result in this kind of practice, right? So yeah, that will help in this particular aspect. And how to build our inner strength? I just mentioned that, like, if we can do that same thing same time, there are so many tips. Every time we will give newer and newer tips, but then we should not rather than going behind newer tips, it's meditation or yoga means to go deeper into one small simple thing, right? It's a lot of wonderful varieties of tips may be there, but then even if I focus on one thing, one small thing, simple thing, and if I can go into the depths of it, so that's very important. That's why you will see in the yoga, in the institutes, or in like when we talk about Bhagavad Gita, when we talk about the spiritual yoga and mantra meditation and all, we don't try to speak too many different things. Our focus is one. If we can just put focus on one thing, that's the chanting of the names of the Lord. Just put focus on one thing, and then fully focus on that, and try to improve the quality of it day by day by day, and you'll see the difference. You will be completely a different person. People around you will say, like, many times our students have come back and told us that, how come you're not getting angry in this kind of situations? You would get angry, but how come you're not getting angry? How come you're performing well? How come you're composed in different situations? This is what people, they observe when people do this mantra meditation very seriously and very sincerely and strongly, right? So that's the benefit of doing this mantra meditation, right? And then you said about Swadharma, then why did Dronacharya separated Arjuna as Kshatriya Varna and Ekalavya as other Varna? Yeah, that's their Varna. That's specifically their Varna. See, Kshatriya means not just somebody who's just showing some valor. That means even a street fighter can become a Kshatriya. No, so that's not. He should also be very, very strict about his principles. He should also be like sticking on to the principles very strongly, right? So in the case of Karna, sorry, Ekalavya, like here Ekalavya, right? So in the case of Ekalavya, the principles was like, there was not very strong principles was there, from his side. So he was weak in that particular aspect. and also like he were trying to bypass his spiritual master. That's also not a very good thing. So how to overcome, how to come out of the depression cycle? For example, if person is depressed, what things he can do to come out of it, and how much time it takes. The time may vary. But one very important thing about the depression is that now we saw this cycle of fall. No, dhyato vishayan pumsa sangateshu bachayate sangat sanchayate kamat kamat krodha bijayate krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibrama smriti bramshat buddhi nasho buddhi nashat pranashyati. Right. So the first step we saw is the contemplation on the objects of the senses. Right. So that's the point. And you can imagine, this is like jumping off a cliff, jumping off a hill, and then, developing attachment, developing lust, and getting into anger, getting into further cycles. It's all different altitudes on this particular jump. So where I have the decision to make, when I actually, before jumping, dhyato vishayanpam, so before contemplating on the objects of the senses, before contemplating on depression, means sometimes like one common depression thing that I often see and handle is that, oh, the other person is able to do, I'm not able to do, or people are bullying me, or things like that. So it's more from the comparison point of view. It's more from, I am not able to have that particular thing, right? So in that way, like when I see that, when I contemplate on that, that's the point of suffering. That's the point. And later on, what comes is a different thing. And if I'm not able to stop that, I've already gone into this one of bewilderment of memory, and I've come strongly under the control of depression, then most of the times I myself cannot help myself. I need to have an external support, right? I need to have an external support. So that's where the external support comes into picture. So we have spent, I often say this, I had a very good career, and I had very good software job and things like that. And many of us, like in this way, like we had a lot of good opportunities to flourish in our own career, but then we gave up that, just to give time for such things where we can help out people, in shaping their lives better, right? So it's always needed. This is the job of a Brahmana. There needs to be a certain class of people as Brahmanas in the society who can actually understand the scriptures and guide the people, and for their benefit. So you can avail our help and support and things like that in this connection. We need an external support. It's not possible just by our own self, when we are already into depression, right? So, okay. How to overcome depression, which is the cause of health problems, and not by comparing. So this is, we are overcoming. We need to have some external support. Its theory will not work all the times. In ancient times, if there was Swadharma, then why ancient teachers didn't follow Swadharma, like Parashurama and Dronacharya? Why did they separate Brahmana and Shudra, etc.? Yeah, they have to separate. They have to, based on their guna and karma, they have to separate, and that's how the training would happen, right? So the Swadharma was that's the Swadharma. Swadharma means first identify which varna you are, and then give training based on that particular thing. I cannot just go and say like, no, I want to get a training of Kshatriya. You train me as Kshatriya now. So that is up to the guru to decide. He puts through the test, and then he actually brings about, okay, this person belongs to this varna and he has to be trained in this particular way. So the guru should be allowed to test the nature. Otherwise, like somebody can go and say to the teacher that, I want to get trained in this particular varna. That's not possible. That's kind of a challenging attitude towards this guru. And so somebody is asking me, why do you quit your job? Your own personal experience about that. Yeah, I quit my job. There are so many software engineers are doing quite wonderful job. I think like it's too much over there, and there are very little people are there who can understand Bhagavad Gita and teach these things. So I just wanted to dedicate my life for that. There's lot of need is there. If this generation is not going to keep this on, if this generation is not going to practice this thing, so then the next generation is not even going to see these things. They will not even go to hear Bhagavad Gita. That's the problem that we are running into. right? So that I felt that and I wanted to spend some time on that. So Swadharma will it be based on past karma? Yeah. So like Karanam Guna Sangosha Sadasat Janma Yonishu. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Swadharma is based on my past activities. Now, if all of you, try to get up early in the morning, and then that is in the mode of goodness, and then try to do mantra meditation and try to do your maximum work in the initial part of the day, then your mode will slowly shift into mode of goodness. Then when your mode shifts into mode of goodness, more sense control will come, and you'll become either Kshatriya or a Brahmana, or a high class person. But if you're more active on the later part of the day, and then not being able to be active on the earlier part of the day, which is in mode of goodness, then naturally we'll acquire the qualities of the Shudras. That is the mode of ignorance, right? So it's choice is there with us. If we associate with things in mode of goodness, then we will gradually evolve into the mode of goodness. If we associate with things in mode of ignorance, we will develop that quality. Whichever quality we come in touch with, we will acquire that quality, right? So that's how the Swadharma, based on the quality, the Swadharma is decided. So the quality is decided based on our association with the modes of nature, and based on that, I'll develop a quality, and based on my quality, I have to determine my Swadharma, right? So this is how it actually goes. How to come out of lazy mindset? So as we had mentioned, lazy means working below our capacity. We should try to work in par with our capacity, right? So if we are not able to do that on our own, we can actually take an external support, saying that we want to report to somebody who can trust you, who can understand you, and things like that. So if you can report to somebody like that, so I want to do these things, and I'll report to you. If I'm not doing, so you can just just flag me, like just even a small question from the person, like we know him and trust him and things like that. No, why have you not done this? Just on the thought that this person is going to ask me, why have you not done this? I have to do it. So in that way, like we can actually come out of the aspect of laziness, right? So procrastinating and things like that. So this will help a lot. And many of my students actually, I support them in this way also. They kind of report to me saying, okay, I've did these things today, right? So and then most of the times I'm just seeing it, and then but that gives them this one, that this person is seeing what I'm doing, so I must do it. So that kind of helps them in actually overcoming this procrastination and lazy mindset, right? So okay, so thank you. So we have come to the end of the questions, and it was a nice participation. I thank you a lot for showing interest in Bhagavad Gita and trying to learn. So I hope you all will learn Bhagavad Gita nicely, and you can also teach this Bhagavad Gita to few people. That will be a great service to our culture and our heritage, right? So thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. See you again in the next week. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.